Hello and welcome to Spencer's Library. I'm Claudia and today I'm reviewing The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This was a book published in 2006 and it is, in a way, the ultimate book about books, the ultimate story about stories. This is a novel that follows a young woman named Margaret who works in her father's antique bookshop and does a bit of book restoring and a bit of biography writing on the side. Just from that setting, I think you can tell what sort of a book this is. An antique bookshop is where we start the story. One day, Margaret gets a mysterious letter from a famous novelist who goes by the pen name Vida Winter. And she asks Margaret to visit her in her remote country house to uncover the secrets of her life and write her biography before she dies. For decades, this author's life has been a mystery to the public, with many journalists and reporters and biographers trying to uncover the mysteries of her life, but she's remained shrouded in secret and mystery for most of her professional career, and she hasn't let anyone get even slightly close to her, and has guarded her own biography like a very closely kept secret. So our protagonist Margaret is quite surprised by this request that she should be the one to go and interview Vida Winter for a biography. Because while she's dabbled in biographical writing before, she's by no means a professional. More importantly, she hasn't actually read any of Vida Winter's books, which is something that she remedies right away. And she picks up a copy of Vida Winter's short story collection called 13 Tales of Change and Desperation. But one thing she notices is that there are actually only 12 stories in the book. So she's intrigued. She goes and meets up with Vida Winter, still with the intention of refusing this request, this commission to write her biography. However, as you might expect, she is convinced to go ahead with it. And because she's so intrigued, she stays, she interviews Winter, and she finds herself drawn to this aging author and her many secrets. And as she uncovers the secrets of Vida Winter's life, she has to deal with some difficulties of her own and some realizations of her own. The mystery is much more complicated than she had first expected, and certainly much more complicated than we as the reader expect when we get there. The narrative of this book switches back and forth between Margaret's visit to Winter's country house and then flashbacks of Winter's childhood as narrated to Margaret. And as you can imagine, Vida Winter's childhood was anything but ordinary. This is a book that absolutely revels in tropes, and I mean that as a positive. There's an antique bookshops, possibly the most cliché location for a book about books to be set. There is two protagonists who live books, Vida as an author and Margaret as a bookseller and book restorer. There's the whole concept of the mysterious author. There's a manor house, there's twins and governesses, there's family secrets. Jane Eyre is mentioned and referenced a lot, and that's obviously by design, because all of the things that we think about when we think of Jane Eyre, you know, like the dark romance, the gothic horror, the secrets, the power dynamics, all of those things are things that are explored in the 13th Tale as well. It's a book about books, it's a story about stories. It reads like a fairy tale and it references fairy tales. It reads like a Gothic novel from the Victorian age and it references Gothic novels from the Victorian age. It's very self-aware of what it does. The two main characters, Margaret and Winter, are both people that surround themselves by books. Margaret, through her work as an antique bookshop, has an appreciation for books as objects, which is an aspect of books that I loved was included in this. It's not just about the abstract idea of a story, it's also about the book as a thing. She's a hobby biographer. I don't even know anyone who's a hobby biographer. But what that tells us about her is that even people's lives are stories to her. Vida Winter is an author, but she's not just written best-selling novels that have made her a household name. She's also crafted herself, her own life, like a book character. And when it comes to revealing her life to Margaret, she tells it like a story, beginning with Once Upon a Time. The way that this book unfolds is deliciously gripping, with so many layers of secrets, so many twists and turns, and a plot that moves along at just the right pace to make every single new reveal very impactful and unique. And I found myself absolutely spellbound by this story. The plot is so fantastical that if you hear it summarized, you'd say, it's a bit out there, that's a bit unlikely, but that's just it. This book isn't trying to be realism. It reads like a fairy tale where there are princesses and knights and witches. It also reads like a gothic novel with villains and ghosts, secrets hidden in big houses. It reads like mythology with people's fates decided by their parents and by their gods. It's all of these things. It's a story that tries to be the epitome of a story. If all of that sounds interesting to you, I think you'll love this book as much as I did. It's a story that draws you in slowly. It's not something that throws you right into the action. It's a story that has so many secrets, and the author wants you to discover those secrets along with the character. And even as you try and guess along what happened, I didn't figure out what was going on until the book told me. But I was very happy to just be there along for the ride and to discover this page by page. If all of this sounds interesting to you, if you really like the idea of books and thinking about books and pretty much every facet of a book, everything that a book can be, then I think you'll get a lot out of the 13th Tale. Also, if you like books like Jane Eyre, if you like books about family secrets and dark things hidden in big houses, then you get that as well. This is not set in the Victorian age, but it certainly pays tribute to that period of literature. So this video is the 11th in my series of what I'm calling 12 Decades of Christmas, a series of videos in which I'll review one book from every decade between the 1900s and the 2010s, every day leading up to Christmas. So we've only got one book left. This one was from the 2000s. Have we decided on a name for that decade now that we've got some distance to it? Anyway, this one is a book from the 2000s. So tomorrow's is going to be the very last one from the 2010s. And these aren't necessarily my favorite books of the decade, but they are books that I've been meaning to talk about and haven't gotten to yet, and that I wanted to make dedicated review videos for. So you can find the rest of the playlist in the description box. And I guess come back tomorrow for the final one. Thank you for watching. Bye.